Okay, we're back now. We had just finished covering Constantine teaming up with Licinius, the Edict of Milan, February 313, and the fact that Constantine's half-sister is Constantia. Constantia will be the last of the line. She is actually his half-sister through Constantine Chlorus. Constantine's own sons will end up not lasting, primarily because the sons murder their relatives when Constantine dies. So the Constantinian line, instead of lasting 120 years like he alleged back in 310 promised by Apollo, doesn't even last until 383 is when they die out. So we have a picture of Constantine that, from the divine viewpoint of history, is not good. Now, does that mean that Constantine was a thoroughly evil man and bad and all other nonsense? No, it doesn't. What it does mean is that the stories that we are told, okay, by our friendly, the people who want you to think well of them, like the Catholics. No offense, Catholics, but you know what? You guys got some real bad skeletons in your closet, and it's okay to have them. It's not okay to pretend they're not there. This is where this is the point I'm trying to make, is that the Catholics claim Constantine as a hero, and so did most of church history, and frankly, so did the Protestants, like Calvin, who was a big fan of Augustine, who was a Catholic. Okay? Constantine was a jerk. We should admit that. What Constantine did was wrong. But you have to argue, was it really his fault, or was he pushed into it by the scheming church fathers, called the Nicene Fathers in this case? Ante-Nicene just before, in about this period, the Ante-Nicene of this period. And the Nicene Fathers, so-called fathers. Those people were all evil. We should admit that. You do not unite religion and state. There were three distinct codes even in the Mosaic Law. Moses was not a priest. The Book of Hebrews spends a lot of time talking about that. Christ was not from the tribe of Levi, although it was in his background. He was from the tribe of Judah. God didn't mix those tribes. He gave them separate roles. We should have picked up from that. But we didn't know our Bible. We didn't care about Bible. We cared about political power. And even today, Constantine is billed out by the religious crowd as a great man. And, a great boon to Christianity. Big lie. Simply because he had a lot of political power. Because all the so-called church fathers cared about was political power. Then that means you don't care about God's power. If you make us think about how big your church is, or how many believers you've got, or how many people are in your denomination, then it's not God you care about. You're telling the world you care about worldly standards and political power, and that you don't even know who God is. Now, did God use Constantine to preserve Christianity? You bet. Did God use the Council of Nicaea to preserve Scripture? You bet. Because as we saw under the purges of Diocletian, a lot of Scripture got ruined, and we do know, although it was only 50 copies, but even in that was a big deal in those days, Constantine authorized 50 copies of the Bible to be created. 50 copies over such a large empire isn't much, but it's better than zero. And Constantine was playing the Christian factions against each other. That's a story that's not often told. First he sides with the Arians. Well, actually, first he sides with the Trinitarians, then he sides with the Arians, then he goes back to the Trinitarians, and his sons continue that battle. And actually what happened is that, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I want to show you a preview of coming attractions. Constantine dies in May of 337. By September of 337, his sons have killed off all the other members of the family who could be rivals, leaving only a couple of kids that are cousins, a couple of males that are cousins, and a couple of daughters who turn out to be sterile. So the whole line dies out by 383. That's God's judgment. Constantine said, 120 years, yeah, dead by 383. Okay, that's where this is going. But we're back here in 313 when Constantine is coming into his own with Licinius, getting ready actually to have a battle with Licinius. And that's going to be another big scholar sticking point where T.D. Barnes and certain other scholars disagree with conventional scholarship. But here in 313, they've just gotten married. Now understand something. This is where we have to go back to Appendix 2 because I have to deal with the scholar dispute. Okay? Licinius was single. He gets married to Constantia, who is the half-sister of Constantine, through the dad. She, therefore, is just married in 313 at a wedding, okay? At a wedding in 313, see, 313, that our boy Diocletian refuses to attend. His wife, his daughter, and adopted grandson are still under Daza at that point. It's due to this wedding that Daza goes and attacks Licinius. And bear in mind, Licinius is newly married. Daza's attack, he mobilizes in February, which is technically winter, and he actually finally gets to the territory where Licinius is to attack by April 30th. These are his hostages. The wife of Galerius, the wife of Diocletian, the daughter of Diocletian, who was the wife of Galerius, now widow, and Candidianus, who was the child of Galerius by another woman earlier, before the marriage with Diocletian's daughter. All those people are hostages under Daza. Daza, though, doesn't seem to be too concerned about them leaving because he goes off on campaigns. And then he whirls around in February 313 at this nuptial announcement and goes to Byzantium and attacks. Meanwhile, the daughter and the Diocletian's own wife, daughter, and adopted grandson are left behind. Diocletian, of course, prudently refuses to attend the wedding because Daza is obviously against it. Obviously, again, Diocletian is still trying for unity. That's his big thing. And so he doesn't want to take sides. Daza, however, of course, goes and attacks, ends up by the summer of 313, dying, with the wife, daughter, and adopted grandson still alive. And this is where the plot thickens, and this is where the scholars start having arguments again. What happens after the summer of 313? Okay? There are two. This whole business has to do with a text about Lactantius in 15 months. It depends on how you read the text. Okay? The point that I make in this thing, showing why I think T.D. Barnes is wrong in the way he's reading this 15 months language, and everybody puzzles over that, even Gibbon puzzled over it, okay, is that Licinius doesn't have any kids. There are 15 months between his son's birth and Constantine's December 316 ruling at Sardica, That was when Constantine finally beat Licinius. They make a pact owing to their kids. Okay, but there are no kids in February or the summer of 313. The kid isn't born until 315. Okay, where is it? It's, I want to say it's July of 315. Yeah, here we go. In July of 315, that's when Licinius has his first kid by Constantia. Okay? By Constantia. That is not the direct Constantinian line. That's the adjunctive line through the father. Constantine's own line dies out by 383. But this is Licinius Jr. And their March 317 treaty, okay, takes into account that son. And I go through all that here. So that's why Barnes can't be right, especially since he says Constantine attacked on 8 October 316 and they finally come to this agreement March 317. It has to be true then that Diocletian died in December of 316. They know he died on 3 December. It's just a question because of there's lacuna in the text as to which December it was. And they're going back to this 15-month language in Lactantius to try to figure out which 3 December it was. And I'm arguing it was 3 December 316 and that the 15 months is based on the birth of Licinius' son through Constantia, which happened in July of 315. The months work. The timeline works. And it also works, as I finally conclude at the end here, it also works down here with Aurelius Victor, because that's another sticking point with the scholars. Is what is Victor's language, Victor's epitome, especially in Latin, is very concise. And so, how do you date that? And so this is how I reconcile it, the retirement. And you'll have to read this in detail, because I don't have time to cover it all. But the bottom line is that after 313, after February and therefore the summer of 313, when Daza dies, and the problem with Licinius rises, see, there's no fight between Constantine and Licinius in 313. There's no need to. Constantia has just been married off to Licinius. Licinius doesn't have any kids. There's nothing to fight about. He has no progeny that can pose a threat. Okay? So in 315 still, he has every reason to make nice with all heirs. And he even still does in July of 315. There's a succession issue that occurs in July of 315. Okay? And then this talks about Victor and the treaty that occurred. Okay? But even in July of 315, his kid is newly born. Both of these guys have just fought major wars. Both of them were under the heel of older. Licinius was under under Galerius, and Constantine had been under Diocletian. They're both relatively new in power. They have huge territories over which they have control. They don't necessarily know their own areas. They're not going to want to fight. That's why they did this marriage thing. And there was no issue. Constantine had 3 kids at that point. Actually 4, but 3 in particular. Okay? And in 315, that was the birth of Licinianus, meaning Licinius Jr. Okay? There's no reason to fight. Not in 315. Okay? But there's this thing with Bassianus, which I don't think is really valuable. And then this is when Constantine attacks a year later, allegedly due to the Bassianus affair. Okay? But it could be that Constantine was nervous. Could be some other reason, who knows? Maybe Licinius did, provoke it through favoring Bassianus. Bassianus was in Africa. He turned out not to be loyal to Constantine. It was kind of a muddle. All right? But the point is that in 315 you don't have a problem. But in 316 you obviously do. It couldn't have been a war in 314. It had to be 316. See, the scholars are pretty convinced that the war between Licinius and Constantine happened in either 314 or 317. The end of it. Okay, well, it can't be 314. Licinius doesn't have a son at that point. There'd be no pretext or reason for Constantine to want to attack in 314. We don't have any real evidence of 314. We do have evidence, even by Barnes himself, of 316. So it makes sense to say Diocletian, who was already sick since 304, finally lost all of his influence, and this war is occurring in 316. So the treaty is in 317. And there would be a war if Licinius's kid suddenly becomes grounds for Licinius to want to fight. And maybe he does it indirectly through Bassianus. Okay? So the path of Constantine after 313 probably took this form. All right? What gets a little more complicated to explain is why Licinius behaves the way he does toward Galerius's widow. Because basically this is 313, okay? This is Edict of Milan, everybody's nice to each other. Okay? Daza goes wacko when the nuptials are announced with Constantine's half-sister, because Daza's worried about being cut out, and rightly so. Okay? So Daza attacks him. By the summer of 313, he's dead. Now, Constantine did not help Licinius do that. Licinius probably had grounds to be upset, and it's understandable if he might have gotten himself involved through Bassianus, because he doesn't trust Constantine anymore. For all he knows, Constantine and Diocletian are fomenting something. Okay? That could be. But what would account for Licinius's hostility according to Lactantius, which is a very garbled account at this point? Okay? What would account for Licinius's supposed hostility toward the former widow of Galerius and her child? The only thing that you can come up with, it goes back to the same thing, is that because Licinius has his own son by Constantia. And maybe Constantia was under pressure by Valeria, because women do get jealous. I don't know, maybe Constantia was jealous of Valeria, or Valeria of Constantia, but they were both, Constantia was a lot younger, okay? But still, maybe there was some female rivalry, and now that Constantia has a son, there's an issue of the issue. And that could account for the hostility between Licinius and Valeria that suddenly crops up, okay, in the aftermath of 313. Because, see, when Dia is dead, Dia, Licinius, the widow and the kids run back to Licinius. Okay, well, they first run to Daddy, Diocletian, and then they run to Licinius. Okay? Meanwhile, in Constantine's time, you got, and I wanted to show this side, let's hope that the recording doesn't suddenly slow down. Meanwhile, in Constantine, he's too busy to fight Licinius. Okay? Oh. Okay, I'm going to have to show that in another video. I'm not connected to the internet right now. He's too busy to fight Licinius. Okay, maybe I should just contact with the internet. Wait a minute. Let me put this down. what I'm trying to say is that in 313 to 314, as you can see right here, and I'll connect in a second, Constantine's too busy with the fractious Christians in his midst to want to deal with Licinius. So the fact that Licinius suddenly turns hostile, and maybe it wasn't sudden, to Galeria and, you know, the mother and the progeny, could be explained by Constantia having, you know, being pregnant. All right, so now maybe I can connect, because I want you to see this. It should be connecting. Yeah. Here we go. This site is really important for seeing. It's at Wisconsin Lutheran College Seminary. They have a complete list, well, maybe not a complete list, but a substantial list of the laws that were on the books during the Constantine and his sons and afterwards. And, you know, you can pick your period. All right. This is going to be the index. All right. You can pick your time. See? Here's Constantine to Jovian, Valentinian I to Theodosius, Arcadius and Honorius. And I have links to all these laws and their specifics within the Ephesians 1 reparsed doc right here. When I get to these periods, whatever year I'm in, like right now I'm between 308 and 320. So right now we're going to be looking at the laws between, see the link, it says 311 to 364. Okay, so that's covering that period. Okay, these laws, when you read them, you will not want to admit that Constantine and his kids were Christians. Okay, it's shameful what they did, very shameful. The laws that they passed, they're just as bad as Diocletian's laws. And see, here you go. All right, and there's the source of the laws that were allegedly passed. Again, this is at Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, and it's just about laws on 4th century Christianity with the citations. Okay, and this is a summary of the document. Okay, persecution against Christians officially ended. Oh yeah, but as you keep on reading, okay, you find out that there are problems that arise. Okay, you know, there's the Edict of Milan, which you can read up on, and again, the sites for this are Christian authors. Okay, here's Eusebius. All right, and at first there's sort of a honeymoon period, but then as you keep going on in it, you find out, oh my goodness, the Jews are not allowed. The Jews cannot stone a Jewish convert to Christianity. Well, okay. Then they start ordering churches. It gets worse and worse. You just read down. Okay? Constantine passes a law against the Donatists. Alright? Why should there be a secular law against Christians? Didn't we just come out of laws against Christians? Isn't that how he started right here? See, right? What did he say in 311? This one, the slow creep. Persecution against Christians is officially ended, right? That's 311. Okay, so what's happening down here? He orders them to travel to Arles. Orders them. That's in 313. That's only 2 years later. He orders them to go to Rome. What's he doing getting involved in that? Okay? What's he doing getting involved in that? Why is the emperor making laws ordering Christians? Okay? Then he orders the dissatisfied Donatists will not yield to the rulings of Arles. See? He orders them to Arles. He instructs them to do certain things. He instructs them to heal the schism. Why? There's not supposed to be any persecution against Christians, which means no laws against Christians. But now he orders them brought to court. Okay? That's all 313, 315. Okay? Prepare for his visit. He's ordering the church around. Now, you can understand why he's doing that, because the church is acting in a political manner. They're not acting according to God's word. They're acting according to Revelation 17. Okay? He passes laws against the Donatists. He's passing laws against Christians. But why? Because they're acting politically. All these laws that he passes, all these orders he gives, are being given to Christians who are political activists, just like the Christian right today. And so you can kind of empathize with him. But honey, this is happening 4 years after he just finished saying, because the Edict of Milan is 313, persecution against Christians is officially ended. Edict of Milan is 313. But by 315, oh boy, he's making laws against Christians again. Okay? You see how this is heading? That's what he's busy doing. So obviously, he's not busy fighting Licinius in 314. He's busy fighting the Christians who are trying to vie with each other for political power to get him to favor them at the councils that he's holding in 311, 313, 315. And he's holding them because he's trying to get control over them. He's trying to get control over them because they're politically activistic, just like the Christian right today. I'm going to have to kill this. I have to block it off. So that's what our boy Constantine is doing in the aftermath of the Edict of Milan. He's reversing it. He's busy reversing it. So his war isn't with Licinius in 314. And Licinius doesn't have any kids. So Licinius doesn't have any reason to war. Licinius is consolidating his new territory, which he just won in the summer of 313, which occupies like half the globe. Because his territory is north of Thrace, all the way to the Baltic, and south of Thrace, all the way to the end of Saudi Arabia, and the Indian Ocean of Parthia on the east. And he's got a friendly border because of the Edict of Milan. He's got a friendly border with Parthia because Parthia has a lot of Christians in it now. Okay? Meanwhile, Constantine's arguing with the Christians and suddenly, starting slowly, creeping laws against certain Christians in favor of other Christians. And that's a trend that will continue because the Donatists and the Arians are seditious. They're stirring up trouble. Okay? Going to Caesar instead of God. Okay, well, what does that make the Trinitarians do? Well, Athanasia is trying to curry favor with Constantine. Instead of going to God, Athanasia going to Constantine. So you've got the two sects, okay, that's Antioch and Alexandria and Rome are still fighting with each other like they had been for 200 years at this point. But now they're trying to get the ear of somebody who at least is ostensibly favoring Christianity. See, it's not about faith even now. It's about political power. Using the allegation of faith to get that power. Just as Revelation 17 warned. You see? This is where history's headed. And this is why what Paul says, characterizing this period, his own standards of delight, will, and purpose. Constantine's own standards. Trying to do his will. The apostate suddenly, calling themselves Catholics. Trying to get their own standards to be bought by Constantine. Arguing politically. All this politics. Meanwhile, God's own standards are emphasized by the anaphora, which I'll have to cover in future videos. Right now I'm just trying to get the history finished. So Constantine, 313, 314, that's what our boy is doing. He's fighting with the Christians. 315, we got the problem of Licinius having a kid which apparently is the threat to Constantine, or you got the affair of Bassianus, real or imagined, or a pretext, that causes him to invade Licinius and Thrace, and he beats Licinius, and they have a treaty, okay, in March of 317, but the hostilities basically stop in December of 316, which is when Sardica, right here, here's the link to Sardica. Constantine is in Sardica by December 316, which has to be just after Diocletian dies. Okay? Meanwhile, Licinius has turned, probably due to his son being born in 315, Licinius has turned against Valeria and her mother, who is Prisca, who is the wife of Diocletian. Okay, apparently Prisca and Diocletian were, kind of estranged. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the story is there. But in any event, they all end badly. They all end up getting killed by, in Thrace, around Thrace. Okay. And it's somewhat of a question mark as to when they were killed, but it was probably in December 316. Okay. Might have been a little earlier. Alright. And the problem we got there is that Lactantius chapter 50 and following is really kind of it wasn't necessarily written by him. It's a very different style. It looks like it was patched together. Maybe different versions of Lactantius, maybe he wrote all of it, but it was all patched together. So there's been a debate ever since, and it especially focuses on what this 15 months refers to. So that takes us, in terms of Constantine's time, to March of 317. Okay, at that point they have their first truce, and what's basically going to happen is that they fight again later on, and we'll have to cover that in a future increment.